Yep.
Yeah,
I'm going to go right into the waiting room right now, Mayor. And right now it looks like it's Ira.
Okay.
okay.
And keep an eye out for people who may come along later.
Yep, certainly.
Okay, thank you, John. And we will begin. This is our May Public Health and Safety meeting. And we are going to work through our agenda as posted. We're going to start with an EAC update and then move to a number of updates from Chief Gallagher. And then at the end of the meeting, we could have a brief discussion about next steps with regard to the mask ordinance. I know that that's something we'll discuss in the full council, but we can just kind of get our ducks in a row here so that we could make a recommendation. So, okay, so just briefly to begin, we have a few updates from the EAC. So we're very happy that we have our electric car charging stations installed. One is on Essex and one is behind the library. And the library one looks to be active, but I think we're going to wait until our new manager is with us at the end of May to have a kind of official ribbon cutting of some kind. And we're looking forward to that. But I do want to just remind our neighbors that we do have this resource as a community resource. And this has been done in the interest of equity, especially for residents who do not have their own driveway. So this is a way to charge an electric vehicle as people transition and decarbonize. And I'm hopeful that these stations might make it possible for some families to consider an electric car as their next car, even if they don't have a driveway. So we're very excited about that development, and we will say more about that next month when we have our new manager. Our new manager, Samantha Bryant, will join us, I think, May 23rd. Am I right about that?
May 24th, Rob. That's Monday, May 24th.
Okay. So we will talk more about that in June. I also want to thank the EAC and our CAM group for distributing flyers throughout the community. One went out to every household to outline the steps to transition to renewable electricity. This is something that the borough did under Sean Metrick and Matt West. So the borough properties now have renewable sources of electric. And we're encouraging residents to make the same switch. And the flyer details how to do that. I think it's 3 or 4 steps. It's pretty easy. It can be done through Pico. So a number of volunteers went door to door distributing these flyers. I'm really grateful for the work that went into gathering the information and distributing the flyer. One important step is we're trying to record the progress that we're making as a community to decarbonize. And so the flyer gives an email so that people can kind of report in once they make the switch as a household. And then the data can be collected through our ICLEI software known as ClearPath. And the EAC will be keeping track of that. Joe Toscano has been working on it. So, you know, a lot of what we're trying to do in terms of our climate action plan is underway, but it is going to be a process. It's going to be a process and a partnership between the government and the community, the residents, because we want to work in both domains. So just a word of thanks to our EAC, to CAN, and to Civic for all their work on that. We also had a very successful tree planting. Thank you to the Shade Tree Commission. We have many new beautiful trees lining our streets, and we look forward to our next planting in the spring. Okay, so I'd like to move next to Chief Gallagher, who has a few updates on different matters. And then as a committee, we may have some questions and we can have some discussion with the chief. And then, like I say, towards the end, we'll move to discussion of the mask ordinance. Okay, so Chief, would you like to update us on a few matters?
Yes, thank you, Mr. McGreevy. I certainly appreciate it. And I'd like to thank everybody for their patience. Obviously, this is my teeth cutting ceremony as a Zoom host, and I certainly appreciate everybody's patience. And I'd like to thank Michelle Carroll, who set me up on a license yesterday to host the Public Health and Safety Committee meeting. And I'm certainly glad to keep doing that if need be, even after Samantha arrives on May 24th. But again, thanks, Michelle, because without her, I wouldn't have been able to take this crash course real quick. And I think so far that it went pretty seamlessly. So it seemed to work out well. So she's a great teacher. The one thing I wanted to discuss first, which is the emergency access price crossing update, just to let everybody know the incident that occurred involving the Federal Express truck that occurred on Wednesday, March 31st. That was reported to the police department. We investigated that. Then there was a supplemental report that was added on Thursday, April the 1st. And with that in mind, the witness who was involved, I'll leave that person's name out of it, basically indicated to us that the Federal Express driver had no intent to actually vandalize or engage in any type of criminal conduct with that bollard. So that turned into a non-criminal investigation at this time. We will not be doing any more follow-up. This is a civil matter. They were under the impression, I spoke to the witness the other day who was going to speak to Evan, that the police would be reaching out to Federal Express. That's certainly not the case. If it was a criminal matter, we would. A civil matter, we will not. So they have to get a copy of the police report. They can certainly do that. I gave her the information on how to do that, and they can take it from there. But as of right now, it does not look like an intentional act. It looks like a non-criminal investigation, and that's where the case is statused. I'll be glad to answer anybody's questions about that. I know that this has a lot to do with the police and fire department access, as well as Narberth Ambulance with the bollard. I know there's continuing discussions up there with the neighbors at Price Crossing. But that's the latest that we have from the police department side, if anybody had any questions.
Yeah, John, just to share, I've been in touch with Evan Baum over there at Price Crossing, and I've invited him to our June meeting because they have proposed some alternatives to the bollard for the committee, consideration.
Okay.
I have a question, Chief.
Sure.
Did the driver report the incident to someone?
No, the driver didn't report the incident, Bob. But after an exhaustive conversation with the witness who was involved with the job, she clearly expressed that she felt, based on what she witnessed, what she observed extensively at that time, that the driver had no real intention to vandalize the bollard itself. That just wanted to get by. So based on that information and the other information that we had to reclassify it from a criminal mischief job in the 1400 series of classification to a non-criminal investigation code. So that's kind of where the job lies right there. My understanding is, though, Bob, to your question, to our knowledge, did the Federal Express driver try to contact the police department or the 911 dispatcher at Montgomery County DPS? The answer is no.
Because I'm just curious if a driver of any vehicle drives into a piece of personal property, and regardless of their intent, isn't there a responsibility as a driver to report the damage?
Well, it's certainly
to the personal property that you run
Sure,
into?
it's certainly damaged the property, Bob, and and with that in mind, they could certainly pursue that with Federal Express. But just based on the way that the job laid from last update from the witness, who was the only person that saw it, Evan did not. That's basically where we had to status the investigation. So once it turns civil, we just try to cooperate and give the report and do as much as we can. But our involvement kind of ends at that situation unless exigent circumstances exist.
Okay, I guess I'm asking more just I'm asking for my own education rather than specifically about this incident. I'm just asking a hypothetical question in terms of just the law. If I run into my neighbor's fence post, say backing out of my driveway, and I didn't mean to do it, don't I still have an obligation as a driver to report that damage to the property owner?
That's a different situation, Bob. In the 3100 series, you can't leave the scene of an auto accident, whether it results in injury or non-injury. You have to have, act in good faith and report that to local law enforcement. This is a situation where the driver got out of the vehicle, did not strike it with the vehicle, felt that he was engaging in actions to remove that bollard or take it down. Somewhere along the line, it got damaged, according to what Evan and
Oh, I understand. I see the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
that
I'm
was
not interrupting you. Now I understand the difference. Thank you.
Yeah. So that was a different set of circumstances involving this situation on March 31st.
I gotcha. Okay. I see. The driver got out, tried to deal with it, and it was just what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Does anybody have any more questions about Price Crossing?
Yeah, I would just ask the committee, I think I circulated Evan Baum's proposal from the Homeowners Association. And Andrea, I'll be sure to send that to you as well. I don't know if I sent it yet, but
Didn't get that.
it's just something we could look over, before the June meeting. And if we have questions for the homeowners, we could, send them over before the June meeting.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, John. So then I know you have other updates also.
Yeah, and Rob, just to let you know, so the next meeting would be on Wednesday, June 2nd. I guess that's when Evan would be joining us.
Yes.
Okay. I'm just making note of it. Thank you. Regarding the 200 block of Sabine, I know this continues to be an ongoing conversation for the committee itself, as well as others. I just wanted to give an update from what we're doing from the police perspective. So recently we've been up there monitoring activity very closely. Traffic citations have been issued at that location for disregarding stop signs at Sabine and North Essex. Warnings have been issued to drivers going the wrong way on one way. We have seen a lot of activity involving students from the Wonder Spring facility there, as well as Sabine Park. Children gathering in the area. We have seen definitely an increase in activity recently since the weather started to warm up, and we continue to monitor the situation, but we've already taken action in terms of traffic enforcement there, not only in terms of traffic citations, but also in terms of warnings. The people that we stopped that were going the wrong way on the one way seemed like they just kind of didn't know, which is why they got warnings instead of traffic citations. And right now, we continue to just watch on it, and we are concerned, though, increasingly concerned about a lot of the activity, which we've noticed almost exponentially jump up at the playground itself on Sabine. As a matter of fact, the one thing that all the officers have noticed, we seem like we're getting almost outside organized sports down at the Narberth Playground at 1 Haverford Avenue. We seem like we're getting even more activity up at Sabine Park versus the actual playground and some of the activities that we have down at Haverford Avenue. So that's definitely one thing that we've noticed.
Okay, and just as a note, we will return to the road sign review process. That is on hold, as we await our new manager. So I know the Sabine issue will be, a top priority in that review process.
May I ask a question, Chief?
Certainly.
Thank you for hosting tonight. When you say you're witnessing increased activity, especially by the playground, do you mean by people driving to and from the playground, you're seeing traffic violations?
Oh, no, I just mean in terms of activity, Mona, where we just see a lot more activity at the playground with children.
Okay.
Not necessarily the moving violations, but at the playground. So our concern is a lot of that activity, whether they're being dropped off, driven there, they bust out into the pavement area, they cross the street. You can almost illustrate yourself a picture, but no, in terms of the activity, it's at the playground itself.
Okay, thank you.
And Chief, I just wanted to share anecdotally. I've been going up there quite a bit. We have the community gardens up there now, and I was up there as a member of the Shade Tree Commission planting trees. And I've noticed that when I drive up there, the real temptation to want to turn left onto Sabine Avenue out of that parking lot. And I have to double check myself every single time I pull out of that parking lot because it's a one-way street. And
Sure.
I can see why people maybe make that mistake. And I do think it's warrants like some kind of extra special sign or something. I totally get it.
Bob,
So-
can I ask, there's two signs right there saying don't turn left.
I know. I saw them both. They flank the road they flank that exit on both sides. But even so, it's still like this impulse to want to turn left. And I'm not sure what you do about it, except maybe paint the street or, maybe paint the drive, paint the road. Maybe there's a place across the street that also needs a no left turn sign or something. But I totally get why people would miss the signage. Yeah. So just anecdotally.
Thanks, Bob. The one thing I would like to add is one of our overarching concerns, in addition to the things described with traffic going the wrong way on one way and the stop signs being run through down at North Essex and Sabine, is I have an increasing concern, and some of the officers have an increasing concern about traffic that is along Montgomery Avenue and it's turning right or left off of Montgomery down Sabine. The speed which they're traveling is of serious concern. So we're out there trying to enforce that as well. In fact, Officer Dan Dutton and I were just there handling a pretty serious auto accident on the opposite side, helping Lower Merion. And while we were there, that's what we witnessed. We witnessed a lot of traffic either turning right or left off of Montgomery Avenue down the 200 block of Sabine. And unfortunately, since we were tied up with the auto accident, we couldn't intervene, and we saw people racing towards North Essex. And that's definitely another concern that we have. So in addition to that, I think that's one of the real threats is the speed itself, because speed kills.
On that question, I've always wondered, Chief, I know I've read studies that say when you have parking on both sides of the street, it's like a real traffic calming effect. It seems to me that that's one of the things that could be done there to slow some of that traffic, because the roadway is so wide there. Maybe even to stripe a narrower lane, that might also improve the two-way issue. If you were to stripe a single lane down the middle of that road, rather than have it appear as if it could go both ways, that might help with arrows. But also maybe allowing for parking on both sides would also have a traffic calming effect.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just throwing out ideas. But
Yeah.
I appreciate you looking at the situation.
Yep. I just jotted that down. Okay. Does anybody have any other questions before I move on to the next topic, which is kind of closely related?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Chief.
So recently, we have a concern from some of the residents that live in the area of Conway and Windsor about the Lower Merion School District bus dropping off students at that intersection, but vehicles are still traveling through that intersection, or not stopping there, or not yielding to the bus discharge. So that is a serious student safety concern. So on Monday, May 3rd, I went out there and I met with the parents and the guardians myself, and I spoke with them and I listened to their concerns. So it appears to me that and I was there at 3:45, 3:50 in the afternoon, when the bus comes down the street and it comes down Conway Avenue and it's heading southbound towards Windsor, it stops, just north of Windsor, and it extends its arm, and its stop sign, which is only on the driver's side, not on the passenger side discharge. And I think there's a combination of motorists that are traveling east and west along Windsor Avenue that simply just don't know that they have to stop. And then there's another portion of them that probably don't care. While I was there, I did not see anybody actually go around the bus from Conway Avenue. I did not see that. But what I did notice while I was there, that it seems like it's prompting some confusion, and we're getting increased traffic at that time that starts to go the wrong way down the 100 block of Conway towards Haverford Avenue. So what we did to remedy that situation, I grabbed Charlie Boat, our school crossing guard, And just periodically until the end of the year, I asked Charlie to go down there and basically serve as a school crossing guard at that intersection, primarily when the bus discharges around 3:45, 3:50. So Charlie moves as soon as St. Margaret's Corner is done at North Narberth and Windsor, moves down to the west and covers the corner of Conway and Windsor, just as a traffic calming effect and to regulate traffic, and also just kind of remind drivers that they have to yield to the bus when it's in discharge mode. So that ticket carries a heavy fine when you go around a school bus or you disobey the signals that are coming off a bus when it's in red flashing locations. It's at locations and the lights are flashing red. So we've already provided remedy to that. We're going to continue to monitor it. And we're hoping that a collateral benefit of Charlie's presence there will be stopping traffic from going the wrong way down the 100 block of Conway towards Haverford as well.
Chief, could you just remind folks what that fine is if for disobeying a stop sign for a bus?
Well, I can tell you what I can tell you, Mayor, without exact recollection, that our standard fine for a hazardous moving violation is after court cost and other fees are assessed is around $148 to $150. If you go around a school bus, that almost goes up by 2. It's almost double. Okay. So you're probably talking at just under $300 for going around a school bus.
And I assume there's points on your license for that as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for dealing with that, finding a solution. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and we wanted to respond right away. We got a few calls from some concerned neighbors in the area of Conway and Windsor, and we responded quickly. And May 3rd, we went out there and assessed it, and by Tuesday, May 4th, yesterday, we already had a remedy in place. Does anybody have any questions about that topic?
No, thank you.
No. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it very much. The next thing I wanted to give an update that seems to always be on everybody's mind is the project at 114 Forest Avenue. Just to let everybody know, there is now a new superintendent of construction at that location, effective Monday, May 3rd. The traffic was closed temporarily again today on Wednesday, May 5th. We did have a problem up there where the power lines were down on Friday, April the 23rd. And PECO came out, and I believe that PECO is now going to send that to their claims division, because I believe that there was a violation of some safety standards involving their power lines as they were taking a boom and operating it between 2 power lines. I spoke to the mayor about that extensively while I was out there at that location that day. We had to take the entire 100 block of Forest and block that to pedestrian vehicular traffic. We had a live PECO wire down there. It was a dangerous situation, and it appeared that the boom knocked it down. The wire fell on the boom and it fried the system electronically, and we could not even get that boom out of there. So that we were out there for an extensive period of time. I spoke to the mayor. The mayor expressed some of her concerns there that a lot of the workers were there on Saturdays and later in the afternoons on Thursdays and Fridays with no supervision. As it turned out, that was the case. There is no foreman. There is no superintendent at that location, and you have different workers that are contracted out that come in. And the mayor also mentioned that that there were beer bottles often by the fence area that are left there by the workers. So I immediately had a conversation with Tyler, the foreman, but Tyler has now been replaced by a guy named Don. I have Don's contact information, and we're still going to continue with our meetings on Fridays at 10 a.m. regarding 114 Forest Avenue. And I'm hoping that the communication is a little bit better. Not that Tyler was bad or negative in any way. He was very helpful, but we're hoping that maybe as this project comes to a close in the near future, we're going to see maybe a little bit of a more supervision of the workers in the afternoon, because I believe that that's definitely what led to the problem on Friday, April 23rd.
Mm-hmm. And John, have you heard any more about demolition on the Haverford Avenue projects? Or?
No, I have not.
Okay.
And that's pretty much what I have so far for 114 Forest Avenue. I do not have any more information about street closures at that location for the 100 block. We do always have this overreaching concern that we've identified these parking locations down here in the unit block of Haverford Avenue below Conway Avenue. These spots are not being used, even though Michelle Carroll had the best intentions and drafted up some nice signs and we posted them. They're not being used. So I'm going to have a conversation with Donnie, the new superintendent, and hopefully we can get that done, because what they're doing is they're taking up some parking meter spots along the 100 block of Haverford Avenue, and that's impacting business. I mean, a 100 block of Forest, and that's impacting business there. And it's also when they park opposite of the site itself, when the parking meters across the street, which we've posted from time to time that there's no parking to keep people going by, that's causing somewhat of a bottleneck as well if they have a boom operating or other construction equipment operating on the street.
Okay, thank you for all that.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about 114 Forest?
Nope.
No? Okay. So my last and final update, which is overall good news. I think things are moving well. So on Wednesday, April 21st, at our last business meeting, the resolution was adopted to endorse the cooperation agreement between the Narberth Police Department and the Lower Merion Police Department by council, and that was signed on Thursday, April 22nd, and it was presented over to Lower Merion on Friday, April 23rd. So we're just waiting for the township manager and the superintendent of police to return that with signature. My understanding as a result of our last meeting on Thursday, March the 4th, that everything was a go. I don't anticipate any problems. Myself and the new borough manager, Samantha, are going to have to get together to discuss remuneration of appropriate fees over to Lower Merion for professional services. And I'm certainly going to give Samantha an update from 2018 right up until now on what the situation is with the police services, and also kind of invite Fran Dixon into that meeting to let her know exactly what happens with the fire services, that the fire department is servicing many, many calls in Lower Merion Township as the biggest fire company in the area, and seeing what that reciprocity is in terms of remuneration for appropriate funds. So I want to make sure that Samantha is up to date on that so she can move forward with a robust conversation with Mr. McNeely.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for that.
And that's it. That's it for the updates from the police department side for the committee's meeting tonight.
Thank you so much, John. I want to just see if there are any questions from the committee. One question I wanted to ask, John, I think that you've already scheduled the training on anti-bias training. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I have an update on that as well. Thank you, Rob, for actually reminding me. So as you know, our sergeant was promoted on February the 3rd. And with that in mind, one of our first priorities is to get him training for first line supervisor in law enforcement and policing. So we've identified a course, POSIT, from the Justice and Safety Institute from Penn State, which I think is one of the gold standards in the industry, to get Mike trained in the fall of this year. It looks like the course is going to be in October. So we're going to set him up for that. And that deals with a lot of those issues, Rob, that you just mentioned as well. But it also really trains the newly promoted supervisor on how to supervise in a small department, a tall department, a flat department. It's very good. I attended that training myself. And I'm a graduate of the Penn State Justice and Safety Institute. I feel that it is definitely the Cadillac plan for supervisors in terms of training. So that was one of my first priorities, to get that set up. The next priority that we had is to make sure that our annual certifications were done immediately. We always have to make sure that the officers are certified in the training and certification system with the Pennsylvania State Police. Otherwise, they lose their certification and they have to be put on admin duty. So I have good news in that regard. For instance, if you go through the topic for first aid, CPR, and AED, We already have 5 of the 6 completed. That includes myself already. In addition to that, firearms training is currently in progress at the Montgomery County Public Safety Academy in Conshohocken, and we already have 2 of the 6 completed so far, with more, probably most, if not trained by the end of the summer. And then our Municipal Police Officer and Education and Training Commission seminars, which are scheduled right now at Montgomery County Community College. We are no longer doing virtual. We are back in person. We already have all 6 of us completed as of yesterday. So that is great news for the department. That is one of the biggest challenges that we have, is scheduling that training at Montgomery County Community College to make sure that those legal updates and information about patrol is satisfied each year. So the good news is that stuff is pretty much done and satisfied. We have the information that we need for the sergeant's posit training, which is police supervisor training. So the upcoming trainings that we're going to schedule basically center around cultural awareness, ethnic sensitivity, law enforcement, and race relations. And there's options and alternatives that are provided by the Delaware Valley Trust Association, which is our work comp provider, at no cost. So that's the good news. And they have courses coming up that we can sign up for. In addition to that, the Pennsylvania Virtual Training Network has options and alternatives as well. But the one thing I would like to touch on real quick is that we are in the process of scheduling officers for social media and law enforcement training. Some officers are going to attend that on Thursday, May the 20th. And the course that I really like, that I did some research on, is the Duty to Intervene, which is going to be on June the 8th. The Duty to Intervene course is excellent. It really teaches officers that they have a duty to intervene when they see another law enforcement officer, another police officer engaging in inappropriate or criminal conduct. So that is, to me, that is definitely a benchmark that, you know, law enforcement needs, that they know that there's a duty to intervene when they see one of their peers engaging in criminal conduct or conduct that is not allowed according to policy and protocol. So that is an excellent course, and that will be scheduled for some of our officers on June the 8th. And please keep in mind that these are repeating courses from Delaware Valley Trust, that even though we might not be able to schedule all at one time, that they will be recurring, and we'll be able to get everybody scheduled eventually, hopefully this year. So these are just some of the options and alternatives that we're looking at in terms of training. I believe that outside training, external training, really helps with professional development, and it really improves confidence within each individual officer to do their job. One of the challenges that we have, though, in a small organization is this actual scheduling of training. As we all know, as a small department, we have an obligation to keep officers on the street in patrol in the borough. We have to balance our relationship with the Lower Merion Police Department. So even though we're trying to do all this training, not only with the annual certifications with the state, our training with the Lower Merion Police Department, the other courses that I've mentioned, and the ones that myself and the mayor are interested in, as we just mentioned during this conversation, there's other trainings that I'm seeing as I look, namely the social media and the duty to intervene, which I think are priority-based trainings that are necessary. So these are things that we have to do, but we have to balance our responsibilities for patrol too. So we put our best foot forward in this regard, and I'm confident that what we've done in terms of training during the past 3 years is excellent, and it's going to continue this year and many years forward.
If I may, Rob, the chief is well aware that it's I consider it very important that our officers get the cultural awareness and bias training, and that it is a high priority for the members of our department to get this training as soon as they can.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mayor. Okay, let's go to Mona. Would you like to?
Yeah. Thank you, Chief. I'm taking minutes. I didn't thank you, Mayor Deutsch. I'm taking minutes right now. Did you say there was already a date scheduled for that non-biased training, or no?
No, that Mona, that's the one that's actually in progress for scheduling. So the ones that we have currently scheduled right now looks like it's going to be social media and law enforcement for May the 20th, and the duty to intervene, which I just summarized, and that will be on June the 8th.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, would you be able to give us some specific dates by, say, the next meeting of when the officers will be attending?
Yeah, Mayor, I think by June the 2nd, I should be able to have some more definitive answers regarding the that latter category.
All right, that would be helpful. If you can get us specific dates, they'll be taking it.
Certainly.
Okay. Thank you. Chief, it's wonderful to hear about all of these trainings. I think these are important and I'm glad you're committed to them. And I think you've been doing a great job of getting our officers, making sure that the professional trainings are up to best standards. So I do have a couple questions. I was looking at, let's see, the incidents report from March. And I was wondering, I noticed that the traffic citations for non-hazardous incidents and the traffic citation warnings had both increased significantly since December. And I was wondering, I'm just curious, like what would fall under, say, non-traffic citations for non-hazardous?
So a non-hazardous citation, Mona, would be if your vehicle is unregistered, your vehicle is not inspected. That's a non-hazardous citation. Or if you're not carrying your driver's license, or if you're driving on a suspended or revoked license, that's classified as a non-hazardous moving violation under traffic citation. If you are engaged in going through a stop sign or a red light or driving recklessly or carelessly, and that can also include operating your vehicle without headlights or taillights, that's considered a hazardous moving violation. So you have three categories on the police report. So it's hazardous moving violations, it's non-hazardous moving violations, and then traffic citation warnings. So on traffic citation warnings, you could have a warning for any of those categories. Like say somebody who is not carrying registration, they could receive a warning. If they go through a stop sign, but let's say it's an older person, and I'll give you an example. We frequently have sometimes older people who will be driving and they just kind of get, confused, and they might go down a street the wrong way. We let them know, and we try to use our best judgment, our good judgment. These officers are very good at that. Right. However, at the same time, there's got to be parity. And the one thing I stress to the officers is, for instance, if you're going to sit at the corner of Norbrook Park and Windsor Avenue, and you're going to write a motorist for going through that stop sign at that location, and then an hour later you stop another motorist, but you decide based on the circumstances to give that person a traffic citation warning instead of a citation, you have to be able to articulate that. You have to be able to understand. People have to understand why, because you can't have a double standard of enforcement. So that's my concern. So what I stress to the officers every day, if you want to give warnings to people, give warnings to everybody at that location. If you want to write citations, write everybody at that location, because there can't be any disparity regardless of what the circumstances are. And they've internalized that. They do understand that. Every once in a while, I'll go in and I'll look at our record management system and I look at the citations. And just to let everybody know, when we get a traffic citation, whether it's hazardous or non-hazardous, I personally have to review that citation. And before it goes up to the court, to 925 Montgomery Avenue, I sign off on that with my initials and my rank. And the court knows that I reviewed it before it went that far. And if there's any issues, it would not receive my endorsement and it would not get sent to the court.
Okay, thank you. So non-hazardous, because I see that hazardous traffic citations have gone up a little bit, but not as much as non-hazardous. So non-hazardous, that would be if it's an unregistered vehicle. What other kinds of things might fall into the category for like non-hazardous?
A non-hazardous is unregistered vehicle and a vehicle that's not inspected, a driver who fails to carry his or her driver's license, a driver who is operating on a suspended license or a revoked license, a driver whose insurance, they don't have the proof of insurance. That's also considered a non-hazardous violation as well. That's even if you don't have proof of insurance, that could be considered a non-hazardous violation too.
Okay. But would you know? But how would you know those things without stopping someone? Like, how would you know they don't have a license before you stop them? Or
usually, what happens, Mona, is that's usually the collateral to actually having a hazardous violation. So when we go up and we talk to you and you say, Narberth Police, can I have your license and registration and your proof of insurance? That's where that information comes into play.
Okay, I see. So I guess. I'm glad we're on the, and number one, I wanted to say thank you for, it sounds like you've been very vigilant with hazardous issues and, on Sabine and with the bus stops. And I think that's really important. I saw those numbers and I was just thinking about it because, well, one, I think in our comprehensive plan, we have a commitment to promote diversity and social inclusion, especially of vulnerable and underserved populations in Narberth. And just looking at studies of racial enforcement, it seems like just constantly in the nation and in Philadelphia that Black drivers are stopped more often than white drivers, significantly more. And I don't want to say, implicit bias, I think it's not a police problem, it's a human problem, right? We all have implicit bias. So, but we know that there's this issue with the, potential problems with traffic stops and stopping people, Black people more often. And that's, I'm glad that you are talking about parity. So I'm just wondering what else we could do to think about how to, and I have a couple articles that I'll just send you and the mayor, but I'm just wondering what else we could do to think about how to ensure that, since we all have implicit bias, how to ensure that that doesn't come into play. And I also want to say, this is something that I'm not only asking about our police, I've been asking this in council meetings about our own processes, right? Like, how do we pick people for commissions and boards when there's multiple people looking, or how do we do a search for a new borough manager? So this is something I think that it's incumbent on our borough to look at just constantly all of our systems and processes, because, we live in a society that has a lot of systemic discrimination and implicit bias. And I think it's something we always need to keep working on, all of us together. So anyway, so I'm just, you already have answered some of those questions, but I was just thinking, are there other things that we can do to make sure that we're doing our best and holding ourselves to the highest standards? So I'm glad that we are scheduling officers for non-biased training soon. Anyway, just curious to hear some of your thoughts on that.
John, if I could just add to what Mona's saying. One question I have, and I don't know the answer, because I'm not in the department, but is there any additional data that you could share in the monthly report that would address Mona's concern? I just don't know the answer.
It would be hard for us to actually flesh that out. I mean, I would have to give that some serious thought. The one thing I think that that everybody needs to take into consideration is that, we have a policy where we do not profile under anybody's appearance whatsoever. What we do is based on behavior, is based on actions. If you go through a stop sign, you get stopped. If you go through a red light, you get stopped. It doesn't matter what your race, creed, or color is. We're going to stop you, and we're going to take the appropriate action. And whether that's going to be a traffic citation for non-hazardous violations, hazardous violations, or maybe even on a case-by-case basis, warnings that are doled out. The one thing I can tell you that is Lower Merion recently, within the past 3 years, they did a study in their police department, and what they found overall, that 75 to 80% of the vehicle investigations that they conduct involved people from outside of their township, outside of their municipality. So think about that in perspective to our borough, our community. I've been here for 3 years. The one thing I've noticed on the dovetail of that study is that it is 90%, at least 90% of the people that we stop in the borough are outside this municipality. They live outside the borough, because remember this, that most of our violators, and I say this with full confidence, are in fact from different wards of Lower Merion Township, because we are surrounded by Lower Merion Township. And a lot of people use our borough as a cut through, whether it's through Montgomery Avenue, whether it's through Haverford, or down North Wynwood Road. So that's what we see. And after hearing about that study that Lower Merion did, I took a close look at that time, which was roughly about 2.5 years ago already, at the traffic citations as I reviewed them. And that was the one thing that stood out to me, that we were well above that 90% mark. So, and I talked to the officers about that, and I let them know that what Lower Merion was seeing. In terms of breakdown with Lower Merion, they didn't see anything in particular in terms of profiling. I can tell you right now that I have full confidence in my officers. The one thing is, we all have to remember, it's not a perfect world. There's bad apples in every profession. It doesn't matter where they're at. And policing is no different. The one thing I can tell you from what I've seen so far, and the personalities, and knowing my team for the past 3 years, I have not seen anything like that. I think the other thing that is very, very important for everybody to understand on the call, on the Zoom meeting, is that we have a complaint against police system in place. So everybody knows that if they have a complaint involving something like that, that they can report that to the Narberth Police Department. I will do an extensive interview with the person who provides such complaint. I will ask that person to sign it. If need be, and there's a conflict of interest, I asked investigations to help us out from Lower Merion or the Montgomery County detectives to make sure that there's an independent, neutral investigator involved, so there's no appearance of bias in any way. It's been about, I'd say roughly about 2 years since we've had a complaint against police. The last complaint against police, I think the inquiry came from Mr. Bush, maybe a little less time than that rather, and that involved a parking situation. It didn't involve a car stop or a police officer. So it was about the parking controller, and it involved a former resident that lived in the 200 block of Iona. That's about the best of my recollection.
A resident could also file a complaint with the mayor. Is that right?
Well, absolutely. I think there's anybody can file a complaint with anybody. Ultimately, though, what they have to do is make sure that they get me the information in a timely fashion so we can take the appropriate steps to make sure that that is investigated the right way. And that's what's most important, that we get that documented, that we have that entered in our record management system as a complaint against police, and then it's handled and investigated appropriately, either by myself or if there's a conflict of interest. And I'll say this plainly: say the complaint is against the chief of police, say the complaint is against the sergeant. The sergeant, the officers, I can certainly investigate that as the chief of police. It's my responsibility to make sure that these officers are doing their job in the right way. There's effective, which means that you're doing the right thing, and efficient, which means you're doing it the right way. So that's my obligation. That's my role as the chief. But however, if someone wants to come in and complain about the chief, I would certainly take that information, but I would defer that investigation to either Lower Merion or Montgomery County detectives to make sure that it was done fairly and by a neutral person.
Also, if somebody is uncomfortable approaching the chief, say if there's by any chance a situation where they're uncomfortable doing that, they can come to the mayor.
Absolutely. And Mayor, just to let you know, we have put that out in information to the public before, not recently, but where you have offered your services in that regard, that if there's a lack of a comfort zone with me to complain about a police officer, that they would be more than welcome to go to you as the mayor overseeing police operations.
Okay, thank you, John. Mona, do you have another question?
I just quickly, and coming back to your point about how many of the traffic stops are people who are non-residents, which to me makes perfect sense. They're cutting through. They're not going to drive as slowly if they don't live here. Do we also, so we have data on that. Do we also keep data on the race of people who are pulled over?
No, I don't have that from the last report, Mona, from Lower Merion. And that was basically a snapshot audit that I did looking at the tickets. And what I determined very, very quickly that they were from the wards within Lower Merion Township. So again, most of our violators are from the township itself. Not really Philadelphia, not really Delaware County. It is Lower Merion Township.
Okay. I want to thank you, John. If there are no other questions, I'd like to reserve the last 5 minutes for a brief discussion of the mask ordinance. And then we could have public comment before our 7:30 meeting. Okay, so thank you again, John and the mayor. Thank you. So, okay, so next steps for the mask ordinance, now that vaccination rates are increasing. I believe we're going to discuss this with the full council at our 7:30 meeting. But I did want to just kind of get our thoughts together while we're here in committee and with the mayor. And Mayor, have you decided on a date for opening the basketball courts? Is that right?
So my thoughts were in the letter I put out, unless there was a significant curveball in statistics or variants of the disease, they're looking at June 1st as an opening date for the basketball courts.
Okay.
And my reasoning was fully explained in the letter. Just as an FYI, Governor Wolf will be lifting all restrictions that he's placed regarding COVID on Memorial Day. I think it's the 31st, May 31st. Everything except his mask mandate. And there's one piece of information he's leaving in place. So in particular with, I know there's been some recent articles about you don't need a mask outside. The CDC has revised its recommendations. I still think if you're, within, just inches of each other, or as in playing basketball, it would be prudent to leave a mask on, ordinance in place where people are just within inches of each other and very close contact.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So part of what I'd like to do is just kind of make sure that we are aligned, in our message to the community. And so one suggestion that I have is that we could, I think we will have a discussion at 7:30. We could repeal the mask ordinance. In that case, it would mean that we would still have the PA Commonwealth regulations in place regarding mask wearing. So as the mayor is saying, that would extend beyond May 31st.
The one issue with that is that enforcement of that is really challenging, because there's no guidance on fines or specific punishment for violating it.
Yeah, part of my own thinking is that we need to, the real solution, of course, is vaccination. And the high school, or Marion, has done their first vaccination clinic. They're doing another, I think, next week for the 12 to 15-year-olds. And so I think that we're getting close to a place where we could repeal this. And of course, it would be a process. It would have to be advertised, and then we would have a vote. So I think the earliest we could even vote on a repeal would be at the June 2nd meeting. So Bob, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was going to make a similar observation that basically that it seems to me that it makes sense that we begin the discussion about the repeal of the mask mandate, because we don't really want to fall out of step with the Commonwealth rules. I don't think we want to end up like one of these communities that's more restrictive than the state law, because I think I think the state has their own Department of Health. They have expertise. They have an understanding, I think, a data-driven understanding of the situation. At the same time, it's going to take us a while to do the repeals, so it's important that we talk about it, and like maybe what the benchmark would be if we do decide. Let's say the state keeps the mandate in place for some reason. I think we should have some kind of our own standard for repealing the mask mandate outdoors. Like, let's say, for example, if the transmission rate in Montgomery County falls below 5%, which is what the CDC considers pretty safe territory. So anyway, I'm glad you brought it up, Rob, and I'm glad, Mayor, that you're beginning to think about next steps, because, we should reward people who have been vaccinated with the option of, we should unrestrict them, I should say, because especially by June, by June, most anybody in this area probably should have had, unless they're under 12, will probably have had opportunity to get vaccinated if they wanted to be. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm parroting a point you made to me earlier, Mona.
I'm not sure when the 12 to 15-year-olds will actually have an opportunity. And remember, there's a timeline, especially if there's 2 shots. So you got to find out when they have the opportunity to get vaccinated, and then follow the timeline for approximately 2 doses.
Well, the school districts, if the drug is approved, for use by 12 to 15-year-olds, the school district's planning clinics on Friday, the 14th at Lower Marion High School for 12 to 15-year-olds or 12 and up. Yeah. And then again, they're going to have another one on May 16th. If it's not approved by the 14th. So
then I'm just saying, you get the shot, you wait 3 weeks, you get your second shot. Yeah. You got to just do the math on that.
Right.
Yeah, but of course,
exactly.
it's true, but we're not going to have the under 12 set vaccinated, probably this summer. So we have to make some decision on this, maybe.
So particularly when if you have leagues of kids playing basketball, which is a close contact sport, and those kids are under 12, it would be my recommendation you keep the mandate in place.
Okay, so we will discuss it in the full council. And we have just a minute if there's public comment. Ira, would you like to comment?
Yeah, just quickly, and this may not be the right place for it, but I was wondering if there's been any thinking given to the outdoor dining that's been set up, and how long that will continue. Just quickly, and this may not be the right place for it, but I was wondering if there's been any thinking.
That's actually, I think that's a really good question, because I think the council should absolutely consider just extending that privilege to the restaurants throughout. I'm hoping they'll extend it for a while, because I think the council should absolutely consider. Somebody's got their person unmuted. It's hard to hear. Anyway, I'll save my comment for another time.
Okay, Ira, that's something we can return to at the June meeting with the new manager, but I'll make a note of that.
I'll save the comment for another time.
Okay, Carol Marie. Ira, that's something we can return to at the June meeting with the new manager. But I think,
Carol Marie, you have to mute your Facebook feed, because it's feeding back through our meeting.
Carol Marie, would you like to make a comment?
Because it's feeding back through our meeting.
Okay.
I don't have anything. I'm
Marie,
alone.
Would you like to make a comment?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, we will conclude this meeting and move to the full council meeting. Thank you all.